Story 1. The night shift anomaly. I worked the overnight shift at a water treatment facility for about 2.5 years. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 4 nights a week. It's one of those jobs that sounds more interesting than it is. Mostly, you're walking a route, checking readings, logging numbers, making sure nothing is trending in a direction it shouldn't be. The facility runs itself for the most part. You're just the human failsafe. There were 2 of us on overnight. Me and a guy named Phil who covered the east side of the plant while I covered the west. We'd cross paths maybe 3 or 4 times a shift, usually at the break room around 2 a.m. Sometimes out on the floor if something needed 2 sets of hands. Otherwise you were alone with your flashlight and your clipboard and the low constant sound of water moving through pipes. I want to be specific about the sounds in that building, because it matters. After a few months, you know every sound the facility makes. The hum of the primary pumps. The pressure release valves on the filtration tanks, which click every 22 to 25 minutes like clockwork. The way the east corridor sounds different from the west because of how the ceiling vents are positioned. You stop hearing it consciously after a while, the same way you stop hearing an air conditioner in a room you've been sitting in for an hour. It just becomes the texture of the night, which is why I noticed immediately when something was different. It was a Wednesday in early March, around 3:35 a.m. I was doing my second walkthrough of the west side, the long corridor that runs parallel to the main filtration units, standard stuff. I was about 2/3 of the way down when I realized the sound was off, not wrong exactly, just off. When you're in a familiar room and something has been moved but you can't immediately identify what. The hum was normal. The pressure valves were clicking on schedule. Underneath all of it there was something that hadn't been there before. A low, intermittent sound. Rhythmic. About once every 4 or 5 seconds. I stopped walking and listened. It was footsteps. Slow ones, coming from the service walkway that runs above the filtration tanks. An elevated metal grating about 12 feet up that maintenance uses during the day, but that nobody had any reason to be on at 3:35 in the morning. I stood completely still and counted. 8 steps, pause. 6 steps, pause. Like someone walking to a point, stopping, then walking back. I radioed Phil, asked if he was anywhere near the west filtration floor. He said no. He was in the east pump room, had been for the last 40 minutes. I asked him to stay put, and I called it in to the security desk, which was staffed overnight by a single guard named Marcus, who covered the main entrance. Marcus did a sweep of the building. Took him about 20 minutes. He found nothing, no doors forced, no windows compromised, no sign of anyone on the service walkway or anywhere else on the west side. The access hatch to the walkway, which requires a key, was locked from the inside in the way it's always locked. I finished my shift. I wrote it up in the log as an unidentified sound, possible mechanical, which is what you write when you don't have a better explanation and you don't want to sound like you're losing it. The following Wednesday, same shift, same approximate time. I heard it again, same corridor, same rhythm. 8 steps, pause. 6 steps, pause. I didn't radio anyone this time. I just stood there and listened to it for about 2 minutes. Then I walked to the base of the service walkway ladder and looked up. The grating above me was empty. The footsteps were still happening. Whatever was making that sound was on the walkway and I could not see it. Not a shadow, not a shape, nothing. Just the sound of measured, unhurried footsteps on metal grating 12 feet above my head with nothing there to make them. I climbed down from the ladder, walked to the break room and sat there until Phil came in at his usual 2 a.m. crossover time, except it was now 3:52, so he was confused why I was already there. I told him what I heard. He listened, nodded slowly, and told me that the guy I'd replaced on that shift, a man named Gerald who'd worked West Side nights for 11 years, had requested a transfer to a day position about 4 months before I started. Phil said he'd never told anyone why. That he'd stopped doing his second walkthrough of the west corridor about 6 months before he transferred. Just skipped it every night, logged it as completed. I requested a shift change to days 8 weeks later. I told my supervisor it was a schedule conflict. I've never told anyone the real reason. Story 2. What I heard through the baby monitor. My daughter Rosie was 14 months old when this happened. She'd just transitioned out of the bassinet in our room into her own crib in the nursery down the hall. That transition took about 3 weeks longer than the book said it would, and involved a lot of midnight trips back and forth. By the time she was 14 months, she was sleeping through pretty reliably. 7:30 to about 6, maybe 6:15. She's a good sleeper. Has been since she was about 10 months. We had one of those audio-video monitors. The kind with the small screen you keep on the nightstand that shows the room in night vision. Everything green-gray and slightly grainy, the way all baby monitor footage looks. I watched that screen more than I watched television for the first year of her life. I know exactly what her room looks like on that monitor at 2 a.m. The crib on the left, the changing table on the right, the small bookshelf near the window. The way the nightlight in the corner creates a soft glow that shows up almost white on the night vision feed. I know what it looks like. Which is why I noticed this was on a Tuesday around 2:10 in the morning. My husband was asleep. Rosie had gone down without any trouble. I was awake for no particular reason. One of those nights where your body just decides it's done sleeping at 2 a.m. and there's nothing you can do about it. I was lying there looking at the monitor screen the way you do when you've been a parent for over a year, and the habit is basically hardwired. Rosie was asleep, hadn't moved, all normal. And then through the audio I heard something that wasn't Rosie. It was a voice, low, not loud, coming from inside the room. I couldn't make out words. The audio quality on those monitors is decent but not perfect, and whatever it was came through as more of a murmur than distinct speech. But it was clearly a voice, a low, unhurried voice, talking at a volume you'd use if you were trying not to wake someone up. I sat up so fast I knocked the monitor sideways, grabbed it, looked at the screen. The room looked exactly as it always did. Rosie in the crib on her side facing the wall. The nightlight glow in the corner, the bookshelf, the changing table, nothing else in the room, no shape near the crib, no movement near the door. The door was pulled to, exactly as I left it. The voice had stopped. I woke my husband up. He's not someone who appreciates being woken up, and I knew that, and I woke him up anyway, which should tell you something about where my head was. I told him what I heard. He looked at the monitor, looked at me, went down the hall to check the room. Nothing. Rosie asleep. Room empty. Window locked. Closet empty. He checked everything. Came back and told me gently that monitors sometimes pick up interference from other signals, neighbors' devices, radio frequencies, and that it was probably cross signals from someone else's monitor or a walkie-talkie or something similar. He went back to sleep. I lay there and looked at the monitor for another hour and 40 minutes. I heard it again at 3:52 a.m., same quality, same low murmur, maybe 10 seconds of it, then nothing. On the screen, Rosie hadn't moved. I went and got her and brought her into our bed, and I didn't put her back in that room for 4 days. I want to tell you, we figured out what it was. My husband spent a weekend reading about monitor interference, and we did find out that our specific model had a known issue with picking up audio from other devices on a similar frequency. It was even in some user forum posts from other parents who'd had the same thing. Cross signals. Other people's sounds bleeding through. That's almost certainly what it was. But here's the thing I haven't been able to shake, and it's small. So small that I feel a little irrational even saying it. The voice I heard both times, the low, unhurried voice talking quietly in my daughter's room at 2 in the morning, was not speaking English. I don't know what language it was. I couldn't make out enough to even guess. But both times, it had a rhythm and a cadence that didn't match any English speech pattern I've ever heard. And both times, it stopped the moment I sat up in bed. My husband says that's consistent with interference. Random audio bleeding through. He's probably right. I've mostly convinced myself he's right. I just haven't turned that monitor's audio above the lowest setting since. Story 3, the knock pattern at 2 a.m. I need to start by saying I'm a pretty light sleeper and I live alone, so I'm already more attuned to sounds in my apartment than most people probably are. Every building has its own set of noises, the pipes, the elevator, the particular way the hallway sounds when someone walks past your door versus when they stop outside it. I've lived in my current apartment for about 2 years, and I know it sounds the same way I know my own voice. When something is wrong, I know. This started about 4 months ago. A Thursday night, or I guess technically a Friday morning, 2:07 a.m. by my phone. I was asleep, deeply asleep, the kind where you don't dream, and I came out of it suddenly the way you do when a sound pulls you up rather than your body waking naturally. 3 knocks on my front door. Firm. Even. Spaced about a second apart. I lay there for a moment doing the half-awake calculation. Did I actually hear that? Or was it a dream residue? Is it part of the building settlings? My apartment is on the 4th floor, end of the hallway. Only people who knock on my door are the neighbor 2 doors down if she's locked herself out, which has happened twice, and delivery drivers who sometimes come to the wrong floor. Not at 2 a.m. though. I got up, went to the door, looked through the peephole and pee hallway. The hallway light was on. It's on a motion sensor and stays lit for about 3 minutes after movement, which meant someone had been there recently enough to trigger it. But the hall was empty in both directions as far as I could see through the peephole's fishy view. I didn't open the door. I stood there for probably 2 minutes, then went back to bed, told myself it was a wrong floor, someone drunk, someone who knocked, and then realized their mistake. Reasonable. I went back to sleep the following Thursday, 2:11 a.m., 3 knocks, same firmness, same spacing. I was at the door faster this time. Peephole, empty hallway, light on, no one visible. I stood there longer, maybe 5 minutes, with my ear close to the door. Nothing. No footsteps moving away, no elevator sound, no stairwell door opening or closing. Whoever it was either left completely silently or was standing just outside the peephole's range and not moving. I didn't sleep well for the rest of that night. The 3rd Thursday I was already awake at 2 a.m. I like to say I planned it, but honestly I think my body just knew. I was sitting on my couch in the dark with my phone in my hand, and at 2:09 the knocks came, 3 of them, firm, even. I went to the peephole immediately. I was across the room in about 4 seconds, and the hallway was not empty. There was a man standing directly in front of my door, not reaching for the door, not turning to leave. Just standing there, facing the door, about 2 feet back from it. He was wearing dark clothes, nothing distinctive. He was completely still. I did not open the door. I did not make a sound. We stood there, him on one side, me on the other, for what my phone later told me was 6 minutes, though it felt like it was significantly longer than that. I watched him through the peephole. He didn't knock again. He didn't move. He just stood there facing my door. Then he turned and walked toward the stairwell. Slowly, no urgency. He didn't look back. I called building security, who sent someone up within about 4 minutes. They checked the hallway, the stairwell, the lobby. Nobody matching that description was found in the building. The exterior cameras at that hour showed no one entering or exiting through the main doors in the 20 minutes surrounding the incident, which the security manager said was unusual because the cameras have very good coverage. He didn't have an explanation for that. I had a secondary lock installed on my door the following week. I have not heard the knocks since, which I want to find reassuring, and mostly do. What I can't find reassuring is the Thursday pattern. 3 weeks in a row, within a 4-minute window of the same time. That's not someone drunk on the wrong floor. That's not a one-time mistake. That's someone who knew my door, knew my building, and came back. What I don't know, and what I think about more than I like to, is how many Thursdays there were before I woke up.